Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back, everybody. Our next guest, Claire, she is a 4 times over entrepreneur. She has opened 4 different businesses and taken many stabs at the entrepreneur table. But her current thing is, because she's passionate about books, she's passionate about helping people get their story out there and told, and this has become her favorite and most pet project is publishing. So she's going to not only help you get your book published, but she's going to help you get it to the top of the ranks so that it helps your business grow. She knows how to market the books in such a way that it helps your business grow and helps you get a message to a listening public that you might not have had before. So why don't we bring Claire on the show, along with, I believe, her little dog is coming along with her also, and we'll have a little fun, hear about some of the successes and some of the learning processes that Claire has gone through and how she can help you with those same learning processes. So, welcome to the show, Claire. And how many businesses did you launch? And how did you get this started? Let's start there.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a long road for sure. So I think I'm on my 4th business. I think we're up to 4 at this point in the last decade. And I never really expected to go the entrepreneurship route. A lot of people know that they want to be an entrepreneur from an early age. They're like, I want to be my own boss. I want to control my own schedule, make my own money, so on and so forth. But I was perfectly happy to get a regular job with a regular boss, but the economy wasn't really agreeing with me at the time. I was one of those lucky individuals who graduated from college with a BA in art history, but it was into the years recovering still from the Great Recession. I graduated in 2012, and specifically the art industry at the time was still recovering from the Great Recession and all the job losses that happened in that industry.
All joking
And
aside, isn't the art industry always in some sort of recovery mode?
yeah, it was just particularly bad at that point in time, particularly bad at that point in time. And I really struggled to get a living wage job coming out of college. I tried the internship route. I got, office jobs, front desk jobs, gift shop jobs, but I was still going into debt just paying my basic bills on a monthly basis. So
Right.
I figured there had to be another option out there. And I figured if no one else would hire me, then I would hire myself, because I had also been told many times in my jobs over the years that I could run a business. I had the capability and aptitude to do so. And most of my career leading up into that point was in the retail sector. One of my first jobs was working in a gift store, and that was kind of my go-to gig over the years, was working in specifically small business retail.
Yeah.
I knew from a very early age that I was very hippie minded. Damn the man, save the empire. And so I specifically worked in small business retail, not going to Target, not going to Walmart, not going to the big box shops. And so I figured I had a very well-developed history in running a small business retail operation. So that was my first business, was a brick and mortar retail store. And at the time, I was really into locavorism. I was like, well, is it possible to buy my entire shopping list, or at least the majority of my shopping list, locally from small businesses or local producers, local farmers, that kind of stuff? And what I realized, that the main two consumer pain points for that type of lifestyle were A, having to go to many different shops in order to get everything on their list.
Yeah.
And B, all of the research that it took to figure out where exactly a product was made. A lot of that information is very obscured in the manufacturing industry.
Yes.
And so I figured I would create a general store devoted to local goods, so that I would do all of the background research. I would find out whether, vet the manufacturers, vet the suppliers ahead of time, and then put a wide range of products all under one roof, so that people wouldn't have to go to multiple places in order to buy the things they need. So I had everything from soup to soap to jewelry to art to journals, greeting cards, ornaments, towels, dog leashes, just all kinds of different stuff. And that was my first business. And so I knew going into it, I needed to do a business plan. I had actually done a bit of business training as part of an art and business program that I took abroad during college. And so I had experience creating business plans and pitching business plans to investors at that point in time. So that's precisely what I did. I created the business plan. I started pitching the people that I knew, and I raised around 30 grand. So it wasn't a huge ton of money, but it got me going. So that was pretty much how I started.
Yeah. I like that one. I remember looking for my very first job, and I wound up cooking my way through university, which is maybe pay wise a step up, but labor wise a definite step down.
Yeah.
Feeding people it's tough, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was hit with Reaganomics for my very first job, and I was looking for that, of course, that chemical job, and I had no clue I was going to eventually be my own boss. I started asking all the wrong questions as an employee, and I got told that several times. So, yeah. So, why don't we focus on this right now, because that's a beautiful story, because you know how to run a business. So if a consultant or another entrepreneur comes to you and says, hey, I want to write this fantastic book, they know that you're going to have a stable business and a stable plan to actually develop their book, right?
Yeah,
So why don't we talk a little bit about your passion, because that's a passion also, the books.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So I like to joke that I'm bilingual. I speak both business and creative because most of the time, business people can't speak creative and creatives can't speak business. And that is because of a wide variety of reasons, but primarily I grew up as a creative. My mom was an art teacher for 25 years, and so I
Oh,
was literally born into it. I joke that every bone in my body is a creative bone. And I definitely watched my mom struggle over the years when I was a kid of like she really just wanted to be an artist. Ultimately, that's what she wanted to do with her life and her career. But because of the practicality that's required in our Western capitalistic culture, she had to basically settle for being a high school art teacher. And I saw how hard a teacher lifestyle was at the end of the day, because it's not just you go to school and you do your job and you come home, but you bring work home with you when you're a teacher.
mm-hmm.
And so I developed a very deep understanding of not only how creative minds think and work, but also the struggles that they face in being able to monetize and self support themselves with creative endeavors. And I also experienced that firsthand when I was unable to find jobs in the creative sector coming out of college. And so the experience that I had in art and business from that college course that I took basically pushed me more into the business direction more so than the art direction as a result of all of the circumstances that I was dealing with. And so I just applied my knowledge skill sets, my research skill sets to the realm of business. And I joke that I got my MBA via Google. I looked it up, I learned it, I did the research, I read the books, and that was pretty much how I did a more like hands-on MBA program for myself,
Mm-hmm.
more
Mm-hmm.
so than going the school route and doing the traditional in classroom training sort of stuff.
We don't
And
all need to go
so
to the Wharton School, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I find that it's actually more valuable over the years to have that kind of trial by fire education
Yeah.
in realm
So
of business.
your MBA has more street value.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so once I got out of that first business in the general store, I realized that I somehow had built this knowledge set of business, and a lot of other people didn't out there. Like a lot of other small business owners just hadn't built up the same type of knowledge sets that I had. And so that's when I transitioned into more advising, coaching, consulting in the business realm of things.
Right.
And specifically, marketing tended to be my sweet spot because of my art history background. I'm able to visually analyze trends. I'm able to
Oh yeah.
visually take in a lot of information and find the themes, find the trends, find the like underlying strategies that people are employing with marketing
Well,
content.
let me ask you that. With that being said, because the creative mind, it's the creative mind is also the scientific mind because you can spin a problem several different ways until um, until you find the right angle to get to the solution, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So so that
Yeah.
helped too, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I honestly don't believe in the right brain, left brain divide. I believe that there's all kinds of different facilities that you can tap into. Like
Mm-hmm.
diffused cognitive processing is actually one of the most powerful forms of cognitive processing, which means that I'm also a neuroscience nerd. To slip that in there, I bring a lot of neuroscience into what I do.
Awesome.
Um, and so when you look at like how the brain actually works, how the brain actually functions, when you use diffused cognitive processing, you're tapping into multiple parts of the brain, not just one section of the brain. And that creates the most innovative ideas. It creates the most novel, creative ideas. This is where people invent. This is where people innovate. And that's really a juicy space to be, especially for creatives and entrepreneurs and business people and engineers and, tech people and all kinds of different vocations. Go ahead.
So forgive the neuroscience joke. You must have a very active hippocampus.
Yes. I love my gray matter. My gray matter and me are really good friends. Yes. So over time, I developed this business skill set just more and more and more, just understood it more and more and more, doing research, doing practical applications of it, advising, supporting people through their businesses. And at the end of all of that, I realized that more service-based business model where I was doing coaching, consulting, advising just wasn't fulfilling my creative needs at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I found myself creating over and over and disrupting my business models as a result of just creating over and over.
Yeah.
And
so yeah. How do you keep yourself, because I know for myself, right, that looks like a really cool thing. I'd love to help create that, right? And then I break my processes and then the whole thing goes to
yes.
Right. So how do you keep yourself disciplined so that you don't break your processes?
Yeah, I have to have multiple creative projects on my plate at a time in order to do that. And they have to be projects that aren't necessarily built into business structures. Like the problem that I was running into with a service-based business was that I just kept creating new services. And so I was launching a new service pretty much every quarter. And it was confusing my audiences because I just wasn't doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, which is basically the consultant model, right? And so when I realized this, I basically went back to basics for myself and went back to the books that I enjoyed and the art that I enjoyed as a kid, and realized that a publishing business model, a product-based business model, was just better suited for my creative processes, because I was able to now create a product, sell a product, create a product, sell a product, more so than create something and sell it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so for me, I had to change my business model. I couldn't exist within the service-based business model and still be able to handle my creative output personally. And so I think this is really the first step when I'm talking to people who want to do the book, who want, I talk to a lot of people who want that TED Talk book combo for self-promotional purposes, which is a very valid approach. And I have to ask them at the beginning of all of this, what is your goal? Because sometimes the goal is just for self-promotion purposes, which means that you're probably going to be giving your book away for free a lot. Right. But if your goal is to create money, if your goal is to have the book be a revenue stream, then you're going to use different tactics. You're going to approach it in a different way. You're going to set up the business structure of the book in a different way.
Yeah. I know with one of these many services that we actually have, they become more creative projects than they are services that we do here. So I get that part. But a lot of when they come and they say, "Oh, I have a book and I want to promote it," and it's like, "Oh, that's cool. We'll promote the book." It's like we ask a lot of the same questions. Is the goal to get you out there, or is the goal to make it a revenue stream? Because if the goal is to get you a revenue stream, you need a whole heck of a lot more than just a podcast interview, because that's this much, and you need a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And I keep telling them, it's like, you want to. One of my friends, she writes novels, and I get her to. She's now merchandising and things like that, right? It's like you need to create more than just the book.
Yes. And you need to think of it as a product more so than a creative output. And that's the thing that I think trips a lot of authors and creatives up, is because they put all of the emphasis onto the creative output. It's not the things leading up to it, it's not the things after it, it's just the object that they're creating or they have created. Right. And coming to it with a more business perspective, you think of it as a product line. You think of it as a revenue stream. You think of it as a strategy more so than an end point.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas if you're a consultant or expert, it's to get you attention, so you get on stage, and because you become more the product, right?
Yes, exactly. When you become an author, you have to have an author brand that is reflected. And whether you've intentionally created it or not, it exists out there. And I think that's the one thing that people miss, is that they're like, oh, I have to create my brand to look a certain way in order to attract people. But really, your brand exists already. But you just aren't harnessing it. Like, if there's someone who likes using cuss words in all of their messaging and materials and stuff like that, and they don't really think about the impact of it, the implication of it, like how it's used, that's their brand that exists out in the world, whether they realize it or not. And the key as an author is to take intentional ownership over that brand, so then you can use it to its best purposes rather than it being more ad hoc or just kind of developing on its own.
Right. I got you on that one. That makes sense. So, because brand is basically how our audience sees us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just visual, auditory, just sensory input that tells us a summary of the person, their values, their goals, their viewpoints, their challenges, whatever it is. And so that brand exists out there, whether you take intentional ownership over it or not. And the key as a business owner doing a book is to then intentionally harness that so that the brand goes where you want it to, more so than it having a life of its own.
Right. I get that one. That was that's an interesting hurdle for a lot of people, though.
Yeah, because they don't think about, they think about like, oh, I have to make a brand. It's not, I have to understand what my brand is already saying and then say what I want it, and then fix it so that it says what I want it to say.
Yeah. You got me thinking about some things that I actually do myself, but we'll save that for another episode, though.
Yeah.
Oh, did I just say we're going to do multiple episodes? Oops.
I guess so. Let's make it a series. Why not?
Why not, right? Especially since we're kind of next door neighbors anyway. So
very fair. The West Coast is the best coast.
There you go, right? So once you get people through a lot of these hurdles, then they know which way they want to take the book. If it's going to become a revenue stream, an artistic revenue stream, or if it's just going to be, like I like to say, that your book of how you did something is a nice business card.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've heard of a lot of strategies around how you use that business card. So how do you teach people to find the right strategy?
Well, it's all about the goals. Like, if you have a goal of turning it into a massive revenue stream where you want to be known worldwide, you want mass distribution, that's going to affect what publishing platforms you use. That's going to affect what cover designs you use, what editors you use, what freelancers you use, because you want to use those that are within those strategies. Whereas if you just want a business card, then you could very well just get the book printed at a local printer, have a stack available at home, and then be able to give it away to people for free. And so all of these decisions ahead of time are going to impact those strategies. And so it's just basically making sure that the strategies are aligned with the goal, because people don't often conflate the two. They're like, I want to publish, and most of the time people are like, I'm just going to get up on Amazon, but they don't understand what the implications of using that as a publishing platform is. And so that's why we need to talk about goals, strategies, and then actual actions, more so than starting with the actions and then backing them into the goals.
Right, that makes sense too. Because if we use our book in the right way, I'm going to use a couple big names here in a second. If we use our book, they were a consultant or a coach, and we want to use the book the right way, we can become like Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
And if we're going to go the creative novel way, we can become James Patterson.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, let me ask you this, though, because a lot of coaches and consultants out there, right, is they have all these different processes out there, and I want people to understand that no matter which way you decide with that one, that they should work with someone like you, because it's going to keep it congruent to that goal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I don't think a lot of people know what they're afraid of actually stating what their goal is, because a lot of people are reluctant to say that they're doing it for the money.
There's nothing wrong with that, right?
There's nothing wrong with that. No, it's just a strategy. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm doing it to change lives. I'm doing it to impact the world, which is also a very valid goal. But you're going to have different expectations between a goal to change the world and a goal to make money. And that's essentially where your strategies are coming from. If your goal is to change the world, then you're going to have different strategies than it is to make money. And I think a lot of people think they want their goal to be changing the world because they think that sounds like a better goal to have. But there's nothing wrong with having a goal to make money or having a goal to just have a business card. And so if that goal is the wrong goal that you're starting with, you're going to have the wrong strategies and the wrong actions. And I think that that's what trips a lot of people up, is that they just aren't as honest with themselves as they could be when it comes to what they're trying to actually accomplish here.
You just gave me a picture in my mind of a Miss Universe contest. Global peace.
Yes. Yeah.
Human equality.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's nothing wrong with those goals, because, to be honest with you, I created a whole production company around the idea of helping people create their voice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in my mission statement to change the world. Like, I understand why businesses
there, right?
do that.
Yeah. It is there, and that is. There's a point that you have to get to before that becomes the secondary goal to the number one goal.
Yes.
And I remember sitting in an audience with Marie Diamond, and in her saying that, okay, I've now made enough money that I don't have to focus on the money part because I'm set.
Yeah.
Now I can, and that's what people think that's being greedy, but that's not being greedy. That's survival so that you can help.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to give generalized strategy to people. It's hard to give advice to people who come to me like, how do I market my book? People ask me almost every day, how do I market my book? And I don't have answers that they like. because it all boils back to those goals. And most of the time, the goals that they're telling me aren't actually the goals that they want. They're the goals that they think that they should want.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about customizing your strategies, customizing your approaches, your actions, your messaging to reflect that actual authentic aligned goal more so than following a formula.
What was that light bulb moment for you when you realized what your goals were with the publishing?
It was an existential breakdown.
There you go.
Yeah. After years and years of trying to make the coaching and consulting model work for me, I was trying to like shove myself into a predefined mold with the coaching and consulting model, business model. And after 4 years of that I kept being unhappy. I kept coming across these mental and emotional blocks. I kept burning out, and I just kept hitting brick walls just like over and over and over again. I would try something and it wouldn't work. I would try something and it wouldn't work. I would try something and it wouldn't work. And I was like, what am I doing wrong here? And I pretty much had to open myself up and just like open all of the doors of possibility instead of focusing on 1 or 2 or 3 doors of like where I thought I wanted to go. I just had to like open the doors entirely and just let whatever in came in. And so like for me, that looked like a spiritual epiphany. Sometimes it's an existential breakdown. It's like, it's completely, again, custom to you and your journey, right? And the pivotal moment was a weekend in September of 2021 where I was just crying on my living room floor for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And like, after coming out of that, I basically had to burn things to the ground and start new. And that's kind of where the book publishing business model was birthed.
Yeah, that kind of, wow, that sounds almost familiar too. Ooh.
I mean, it's a thing. It's a thing. And like while I was in this mire of existential crisis, I personally found astrology. I found spirituality. I found some type of compass that felt aligned to who I was and how I showed up in the world. And then I was able to use that compass to move forward. For some people, it's, Myers-Briggs. For some people, it's Strength Finders, Enneagram, whatever that self-reflective personality assessment is that it's sometimes in that realm. And so you just kind of need to find that compass that feels the most aligned for you.
Yeah. I get that one. For myself, I did a friend of mine. He does a peak potentials.
Yeah.
And went through that several times, and it's scary and it's fun at the same time. Breaking through these different walls that you've put there yourself to protect you, right?
Exactly. Well, it's all this preconditioning too that our society imparts on us, like whether you want to call it brainwashing or whatever. It's we've been preconditioned to follow a certain route. Schooling, the whole education system is set up to create production workers. It's set up to create assembly line workers. It's set up to create manufacturer workers and all of that stuff.
We could do a whole episode on the politics from 1890 to now that led us to what it is that we see, and we'll get back
Yeah,
to that.
yeah. That's part of our series. That's part of
Yeah,
our
it's part of our series.
yeah. And so I would say that like the majority of people who come out of the schooling system have this misconception of who they are and what they want because all of these preconceived goals, preconceived needs, wants, desires have been superimposed on us from such an early age. And so I see myself like I'm turning 34 in February, and I see a lot of people in this age range of like 30 to 35 ish, 30 to 37 ish, who are having almost like pre midlife crises because they've gotten all of those things checked off the box. They've gotten the mortgage, they've gotten the kids, they got the car, they've got the, 2 vacations a year deal, but it's not actually fulfilling them. It's not actually making them happy. And so I don't think I'm alone in having this, early 30s existential crisis.
Interesting. It's like because you're not even middle aged yet. I'm just barely middle aged, and we won't discuss my age because that's how old I am, right?
I get it. I get it.
There is something that with that, and we can dive more into that sort of thing in future episodes. But there is something that is also in your introduction that you are a equal human fighter.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, inclusivity, diversity, equality, very much important to me.
Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that comes from a childhood of feeling unseen, feeling unheard, feeling unrecognized because I was more or less existing outside of this mainstream expectations that we're preconditioned with as a child. And there was a lot of contributing factors to that. Like I was an only child of divorced parents. I had very different viewpoints than the rest of my peers. I read a whole lot more than most of my peers did. And I just had this more alternative approach to life, which was then confirmed later on with this astrology compass stuff that I was talking about. And so from a very early age, I developed a deep compassion for the inclusion and equity and diversity struggles that people face.
Right. Would you say that it makes you a better publisher because you want to handle that story with those white gloves and make sure that it's delivered?
Yeah, because I think that there's a tendency to I see this a lot in the publishing world of people trying to just recreate what already did well, which is very common in media and entertainment as a whole. We're seeing this happen all the time when it comes to like the Marvel movies that are coming out and all of the Star Wars stuff and like all of the remakes that we're seeing with like live action Disney movies and like all of this stuff. And it's definitely seen in the publishing world as well. And there's certain imprints that will specifically make it their mission to just replicate whatever else is doing well in the marketplace at that time. And I think that that is a harmful cycle to perpetuate because we just get the same over and over and over and over and over again. So there's no chance for expansion. There's no chance for deepening. There's no chance for just alternative explorations, which is where innovation is created, which is where, inventions are made. And if we are to progress as a society, I think we need to have this intentional practice of injecting novelty into the media and culture that we produce. Because that's one thing that I learned from art history is that culture and people it's a cycle. People create culture and culture creates people. It's just a very solid cycle that goes through eons and eons and eons of history. And so that really inspired me to take control over that process. Is like, how can we actively participate in that cycle instead of being passive hanger-ons?
Right.
So the whole approach to DEI in my publishing is kind of in that vein of making sure that different perspectives are being brought to the forefront, but in respectful ways, in non-harmful ways, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So one last question, and then we'll get to how to contact you and work with you. Because you're an art history major, so I usually use a different question for this. Because you're an art history major and you know history, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Out of everyone that you studied, who is the one person that you would want to mentor you for a day, or maybe sit and have lunch and coffee with for a day?
Mm-hmm. I think about this question a lot, honestly. I don't know whether I think about it too much or abnormally amount, but I think I would actually have to say Cleopatra. I think she is a fascinating figure in history. Like, I've always been particularly obsessed with ancient Egyptology and studying that because it was such a long period of time. Like, to put into perspective, the lifetime of Cleopatra is actually closer in time to the invention of the iPhone than it is to the pyramids of Giza. So, like, the gap between the pyramids and Cleopatra is a bigger gap than the gap between Cleopatra and the iPhone. And so that is just a contextual reference point for showing how long of a rule ancient Egypt actually had, how many dynasties it went through over time.
Yeah. And
the fact that they were a very advanced civilization by the end of it, I just think was incredible. So Cleopatra in particular, I think, is just fascinating because she was a woman in such a male-dominated culture at the time, and yet she made it work for her. She wasn't necessarily trying to emulate the man approach to ruling a country, but she also brought more feminine strategies to the table as well. And I just think that she'd be the coolest person to have lunch with.
Very cool. Wow. That's an amazing thing. Best ways to find you, get a hold of you, and work with you.
Linktree/clairjoyance is where most of my links are. So CLAIRJOYANCE. You can also find me at claireejones.com.
Cool. All right. So thanks for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And find that subscribe button wherever it may be on your screen. Because you know what? You might actually hear more from Claire.
Maybe.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.